Hello and welcome to the Lalo podcast. I'm Juan Medina, founder of Lalo. Our podcast has the same mission as our app, which is simply to capture and share people's stories. What are the memories that you want to preserve about your time together with family and friends? Whether it's sharing a funny story, preserving wedding pictures, or remembering a loved one, we want Lalo to be a place for folks to connect in a private and ad-free space. I hope what you hear today will inspire you to document your stories and share them with the people you care about.
Amber, thank you so much for taking the time with a random Twitter guy to interview you.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, let me tell you a little bit about me and what I'm building, and then we can, hand it over to you. But so Juan Medina, I've been here in the Seattle area for a little bit over 8 years. Mm-hmm. I worked for Big Bad Amazon for most of that time, up until about 3 months ago when I said, can't do this anymore.
Wow, brave move.
I know, scary, but so left. I did take some time off in between to figure out what I was going to do. But once I knew, I jumped ship, and I've been building a company called Lalo, Lalo. Based on really my experience with loss and grief, which sounds sad and kind of a downer, but I'm trying to spin it into something positive around remembrance. And so, I lost my dad when I was 25. And, at that time, like most single 25-year-olds, I was just worried about me and my life and what was going on. And obviously I missed him, but now I'm in my early 40s. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and realized that I hadn't gotten to know him as well as I should have, and I didn't have the stories to tell my daughter, and like all of those things. So I kind of went on this journey to do it offline. Like, found relatives in Bolivia, like recorded it. Found his roommates from University of Kentucky, where he went like in the 70s, and they gave me pictures and stories. And he was an interesting dude. He was married three times, twice to the same person. So there was a lot going. Yeah, there was a lot going on, and but I learned a lot, and it was super helpful for me. And I shared it with my half siblings, and they didn't really know him either. And so anyway, long story short, I was like, yeah, how do I do this in a more modern way? And hopefully like people can do this before the person passes away. And capture these stories. And so, I'm, kind of 6 months into the journey, have a prototype that hopefully will be done at the end of August. I just raised a round of funding thanks to Twitter. I had a tweet that went semi-viral, and I raised like 200 grand in like a week. So
that's amazing. I love that.
Yes.
And I'm super intrigued by what you're doing, because I've been on a similar, I don't know, there's no way you could have known this, but like I've been on a similar quest with my mom, who is, in the late stage of her life, because she has COPD.
Yeah.
And we know that we don't have like forever with her. So I've been very focused on spending time with her, going through, like, we have this mass of family photos, and we have kind of a weird family because like both my parents were only children, and similarly, like my dad has been married a bunch of times. And so my extended family is like not somebody I know. And my family, like neither one of my parents were close to their like cousins or whatever. So I'm going through all these pictures, and I'm recording her telling me the stories behind a lot of this stuff, because it's like family history that I don't know because I wasn't exposed to, and stuff about her life that I've heard in bits and pieces and anecdotes here and there. But I've never done it in a very deliberate way. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing that while she's still with us.
Yeah.
So that I have that for me, for my kid. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and it's like, I don't want to miss that either. So I regret that I didn't do more of it sooner. And I'm bad at it in my own life. I realize how terrible I am. In the digital age, like we don't take pictures the way that we used to, or like assemble baby books for our kids the way that our parents did. So I look at like the stuff that I have of my daughters and I'm like, I've been kind of bad at this. Like there's a bunch of pictures on my computer, but like I don't have a notebook of all her artwork from kindergarten,
Right.
Anyway, I'm intrigued by what you're doing. You'll have to keep me posted because I'd love to kick tires on it when you're ready. Because
for sure.
Obviously, something very kind of relevant in my life right now. So
absolutely, yeah. There he is. What the he, right?
Yeah, this one's my she. That's Hope. Hey, Hope. Come here, silly. Hope. What are you doing? She's like, these doors are never closed. What are you doing?
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I think, the more conversations I have, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I realize a lot of people have this need, right? Everyone has a story, and like you said, like, hey, my family structure is a bit weird. Like I found that like the weird structure is just more normal actually than the normal structure.
What is normal anyway,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've spent a lot of time like explaining, I have a half sister, I have a step sister, I have a full brother. Yes. And then like my half sister, I didn't actually meet until I was a teenager. And so it's like, those kinds of stories where I have to draw people a map a lot of times of my family. I jokingly say, I'm like, I don't have a family tree. I have a shrub. It's like a lot of side branches and like small things on the side. So explaining my family always gets like some interesting laughs and raised eyebrows and like, wow, really? And what? Because it's just not traditional, like by any stretch. And nor I'm a single mom. I'm with a teenage daughter, and that's more normal than not these days. But it's like my daughter and my life is not conventional by any means either, So I don't know. I guess I just like breaking all the rules, like whatever.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, that's life, Like I was also, raised by a single mom, and then she remarried, when I was like 11. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey, but I wouldn't change it, like.
No, I say that all the time. It's like, I think those things shape who we are and who we become. But it's definitely been one of those things where when people ask you about your life or your story, you're like, where should I start?
Yeah.
And can I, like, do you need some Cliff's Notes to follow along? Because it is a little bit different. And, for me, growing up we're probably around the same age, you and I, and I'm in my mid 40s now. And like growing up, I was surrounded by a lot of like nuclear families and kind of more conventional, mom, dad, couple of kids, white picket fence kind of situation. So I always did feel a little bit like the odd kid out.
Yeah.
But now that as an adult and you get more exposed to like much more diversity in your life and people who come from different places and journeys, and you start to realize that there is no such thing as conventional, because even the things that look typical on paper often have very complicated stories behind them. So it's like now I feel a little bit less weird about my my unconventional upbringing and the unconventional life that maybe I've orchestrated for my daughter. But, she's a pretty great kid, so I can't complain. I mean, if I didn't screw that up, we'll be all right.
I'm sure you did not. Yeah, for sure. Like maybe similar to you, like in my almost 9-year-old daughter, like, so much of her life has been, I hope, so much, at least on paper, better, I will say, than my early childhood. And then I'm just like, I hope she's not boring when she grows up. Like, she's not going to be. Like, she's so funny and like, great and like empathetic and all of those great things. But I'm like, I look back at my trauma, honestly, and I'm like, made me who I am. And,
That's what it does, though.
Yeah.
Like such a profound loss of a parent at a young age, like shapes you. My parents got divorced when I was in high school. And I think it was, to them, it was a gift. I'm a full believer that divorce is a gift.
Yeah,
Like in the right scenarios, not everybody needs to be together forever, but it does kind of shape your experience having a multiple parent households. My dad moved away. Like all of those things kind of become part of the fabric of how you adapt and the decisions that you make. I'm not married. I've never been married. Don't feel a real pressing need to be married. Don't know a lot of people in my small circles that have been happily married. So I was like never in a big hurry to like dive into a thing that I hadn't had a lot of great examples of working out well for others. So I'm like, why would I do that to me? Like, that seems like a whole big hassle. So, I get asked all the time, like, don't you want to get married? Aren't you lonely? Like all those things. And it's not like I don't have relationships, which I'm very private about my personal life because I feel like people are very weirdly judgmental about stuff. So it's like, no, I'm not lonely. And I have a really rich life that's filled with a lot of things. And marriage just isn't one of them for me right now. Not to say I'd never do it, just like that hasn't been the right circumstances. So anyway, convention is not something I subscribe to very much, I guess.
Yeah, which I think is fantastic. I mean, part of me leaving Amazon after 8 years, I looked, last year in the middle of the pandemic, I was like, I had enough. I could not do one more Zoom call. I was like getting up in the morning, like, I can't do this. Right. And so I took a break, and part of that time, to think through my life was to say, like, a lot of the paths I'd taken maybe were a bit more conventional at times, because I was like, well, that's just what you do. You go to college, and if you can get your MBA, well, of course you do that. And if you can get into a place like Amazon, like, well, why would you not do that? And then, but I wasn't super happy with the outcome. I mean, I won't lie, the money was great and blah, blah, blah. But like, maybe it's that midlife crisis thing that that I hit.
I think you get to a point in your life where you just start realizing that other people shouldn't be writing the script. Like I have had, my career has been unconventional. I went to college but didn't graduate because of some extenuating circumstances. And I was in a horrifically abusive relationship in college. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in no way equipped to be in college and functioning. So I ended up dropping out to kind of deal with personal stuff. And then I fell into a career, and my career has been a lot by what's the word I'm looking for? Impulse, opportunities come up, and I'm like, okay, that feels like a good thing right now. So there's nothing conventional about that either. I've worked in nonprofits. I've worked in startups. I've worked in massive companies. I owned my own business. I've seen wild success. I've seen catastrophic failure. The failure of my business pretty much ruined me financially. So, it's like I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and now I work for a $10 billion gigantic company in a really great job that I really love. So it's like, there's nothing conventional about any of my career choices. And I was on the path to be in marketing leadership. I had executive titles and executive roles and building and leading marketing departments. And my role today at LinkedIn is as an individual contributor. And people thought I was crazy giving up fancy ass titles to be an IC. But I'm doing work that I really enjoy with people that I absolutely love in a company that I really like and appreciate and enjoy being part of. And it's like you get to a point in your life where you start realizing that maybe things matter differently now, even than they did before. And it's not to say you were wrong when you made those choices. It's like that's what you had to work with at the time. And maybe those were the right choices then. But I believe powerfully in when that stops working for you, make different choices,
For sure.
It's so I get looked at all the time because I'm crazy, because I do things that, I zig when other people zag, but so far it's worked out okay for me. most of the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't believe there's any one way to do things the right way, as it were.
Right. Yeah. And it's not crazy to do things that make you happy and that you that you feel passionate around. And so
I mean, as
totally
far as I know, we get one spin on this rock. So I'm trying to like enjoy some of it and not just, as they traditionally say, you know, I don't want to live to work.
Right.
And watching my dad grind in a corporate career for many years because he felt very strongly about, you know, being the provider and making sure that he did all the right things on behalf of his kids. And I watched him burn himself out doing that, you know, and he has a lot of, I won't say deep regrets, but they're like, you know, he wanted to start his own business and never did because that felt like a reckless decision, you know, when he had young kids in the 80s. And, you know, he could have been part of the personal computer like revolution and just that felt like a risky decision to him. So he didn't do it. And now he regrets it, not just because of like the financial success that could have come with it, but he really wanted to be an entrepreneur. So he missed that boat. So I don't want to be, you know, I always joke that I want to slide into my grave, like ruined, wrecked, kicking and screaming and not like with like real stories under my belt. You know, I don't want to look back and be like, man, I really wish I'd taken bigger risks, or I really wish I'd cared less about what other people think. You know, you read all those articles about what people say their regrets are at the end of their lives. And it's never like, gee, I really wish I worked more hours or, you know,
if I just made one more stock vest, that would
if I made one more PowerPoint deck, I would feel so much better. You know, so I don't subscribe to that. And that means I'll probably be working till I'm 100 because I'm a little financially reckless and I'm a little bit career reckless. But man, I don't know. I feel like I'm living life now as opposed to waiting for it for someday. And that's not for everybody, but that's my take on it.
I love that. I love it. Are you, where are you based out of? Are you West Coast, East Coast?
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm a 4th generation Chicagoan, in fact.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay.
We're just kind of like here. Like my family showed up here, some of them from Canada and some of them from Europe, and they just sort of stayed. So this is where we are.
Chicago's a great town. Actually, you know, when I graduated from college, I moved home with my mom and stepdad to Michigan. And my mom was like, oh, stay as long as you want. And my stepdad's like, get a job. So
get out.
Yeah, pretty much. So I got a job in Chicago. I lived there for 6-7 years. I loved it. You know, it's great.
I still, you know, I've been fortunate to travel all over the world, and it's still one of my favorite places. It's not fun in February, but it's amazing in the summer. And I think just in terms of like big cities, it's so clean and Midwestern and green, and like diverse and interesting. And there's just so many world-class things about Chicago that it's hard not to love it. I'd like to live somewhere else at some point in my life. You know, family keeps me here a lot, but someday, you know, when my daughter's off at college and my mom is gone, like, I don't know, maybe I'll pick up roots and go hang out somewhere else for a while. But like I said, I'm fortunate that I get to travel and see a lot of places as part of my work. So I feel like I get a good taste of like other places. But I'm always happy to come home to Chicago. And like I said, you know, 4th generation here, it's kind of in my blood, this city. And it's kind of, sure. I think I would miss it. I mean, I'll always be able to come back, but I don't know. It's like, I lived in Milwaukee, which is, I never consider that really moving away from Chicago because Milwaukee is like so close by. But I went to school in Milwaukee and I lived there for 8 or 9 years afterwards. And it's like, coming back to Chicago was always just a given to me. It was like, well, of course I'll go back there eventually. And I did. So I hopefully it doesn't make me sheltered having been in one place for so long, because I get to travel and see other places, and I make a deliberate effort to do that. But it is definitely home and a place that I love very much.
For sure. I mean, if you're going to be sheltered at one place, Chicago is not a bad spot. It's not like you're in the middle of nowhere.
It's not like I'm in the middle of nowhere, like Nebraska or something. No offense to Nebraska people, but Yeah.
Half of my listenership is in Nebraska. No, I'm just kidding.
You never know. We're gonna bring them in now on. All the Nebraskites are gonna. So what they call themselves, Nebraskites? I don't know. Nebraskans.
That's right. Yes. Chicago. I remember I had my office, or the place I worked was in Waukegan, right on the border there. And
where my mom lives.
I remember walking in to the office, and just from my car to the office, the top of my water bottle froze. This was in January or something. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, we definitely don't mess around with winter here. Winter is legit, and it sucks.
Yep.
And there's, we pay for a few months out of the year to have a glorious, other 9 months of the year. I don't know, maybe 9 months is generous, but between I don't mind winter during the holidays because it seems seasonal, and that's
right.
But right around January 15th, I'm always okay, I'm ready for that to be done.
Right.
I'm ready for the snow and the cold and the wind to stop, and I'm ready for it to be warm again. But we always have to endure through another 2 months of.
Yeah. I feel like everywhere has each geography has their thing. I mean, in Seattle, it legit rains for 6 months straight. So,
yeah. See, I'm not sure I could do that. I love Seattle as a city, but I don't know if I could live in the raininess all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I always joke that the perfect climate doesn't really exist, but Southern California gets pretty close. If I could afford to live in San Diego the way I live in Chicago, I might do that, but I don't know. LinkedIn's going to have to come up with a lot more money for me to do that.
There you go. LinkedIn.
Come on, LinkedIn, you can do it. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I think that was honestly a lot of what I wanted to talk about with you. I don't know if there's, one thing I was curious about, if you have the time, real quick, is you do seem to have a great engaged following on Twitter. I think you're super funny and genuine, which I love. And so any pointers there on how you've built that audience?
And, everybody hates this answer because I get asked this a lot, and there was no grand master plan. There never has been. I've been on Twitter and social media pretty much since its inception. I mean, I was on Twitter in 2007. Actually, I think I made an account in 2006, killed it, and then started a new one in 2007, which is the one I still have now. And I've been active on the web since it started. My dad was in IT and MIS. So I had access to the internet before a lot of other people did. And I was doing IRC and BB stuff a long time ago. So I mean, I've been involved on the web for a long time, and there is no grand architected plan, which as a marketer is kind of a terrible thing to say out loud. It's there was no strategy here. I promise I do things strategically for my clients, but as far as I was concerned, a lot of it's just been organic. And my biggest, I hate to call it a tip because it sounds so guru-y, but consistency is everything. Showing up, being part of a thing, and being willing to give more than you take has always been kind of my mantra. So whether it's writing that I did on my blog for many years, it's give away what's in my head for hopefully for the betterment of the industry as a whole, or being part of those conversations. I show up on Twitter just to kind of make friends and have fun conversations, and sometimes to rant and rave about stuff that pisses me off. And I don't do anything on purpose. I don't care who's following me. I don't care how many people are following me. Like
Right.
I don't pay attention to any of that stuff.
Right.
For me, it's always just like the fundamentals of community are showing up, being present, and doing that on a consistent basis. And I feel like that's the part so many people miss, is like they're trying to contrive some easy button or some
Right.
quick fix. Like, how do I do this to grow my audience? I'm like, you don't. You just show up and like are part of it. And if you're good at it and contribute something, like the audience is the result of the effort you put in. It is not the goal. So it's a little backwards like logic, I guess, but that's always been the philosophy I've approached online platforms with, and it seems to work out okay for me so far. I mean, I'll never be as crazy, internet famous or whatever as some other people, because I won't put in the designed effort to try to grow that. It's not in my DNA. But I've gotten my job at LinkedIn, I got because of social media. My book deal, I got because of social media.
That's amazing.
Lots of clients I've worked with in freelance capacities, like so much has come to me from participating in these channels. So whether it's scripted or architected or not, or very organic, which is the way that I do it, I believe that there's intense value in just being part of the community. So that's the part that I focus on.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I've had an account forever, but I got more involved in January when I started thinking of the startup to connect with people and learn. And I've been myself, like, for better or worse. And sometimes, you get crazy stuff and you're like, why am I even doing this? But then, so much good has also come through it that I'm like,
I've had my fair share of trolls, and I've had a couple of stalkers. I've had a couple of legit death threats over the years.
What? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Funny enough, one of them came from me telling a guy who was ranting and raving at me on Twitter about something. I said, "You're real cute when you're angry." It triggered something in that guy, and he went to town, and I had to I had to get the police involved. And
what? Oh my gosh.
I mean, just last month, I posted a thread on Twitter, like a date that I overheard in a coffee shop that went kind of crazy viral. And then, I won't go into too many details, but some people objected to that whole thing. And I also I had someone try to get me fired at my job. I had to lock down my website and all kinds of stuff because I was getting all kinds of hate messages. And
this is crazy.
It's just the internet has its downsides.
For sure.
You have to be careful. And as a woman, I do have to be careful.
Absolutely.
But I take a lot of that stuff in stride. And you're like, it's just kind of part of putting yourself out there, I guess.
Definitely.
You'll have the crazies, just like I said, you gotta kind of do that in stride.
Oh man. Well, Amber, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. And we'll be in touch. I'll be working on kind of editing this and etc. here in the next week or so, but really appreciate your time.
Awesome. It's absolutely my pleasure. Reach out anytime.
Excellent. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Alrighty. Bye.